Concept 3, comparing quadratic functions. Okay, so we have looked at linear functions and exponential functions. So quadratic functions actually have a lot more to look at when we're comparing them. Okay, we still have the rate of change. Okay, we don't have a consistent slope, so we're talking about rate of change. But we've also got the direction that the parabola opens. We've got the places where it crosses the x-axis, those x-intercepts or zeros. We've got the vertex or the maximum or minimum, depending on which way it opens. And all of these things are useful for talking about and comparing different quadratic functions. Okay, so let's look at the examples we got. Again, we have one on a graph and we have one in a table. If we are just going down the list, if I'm looking at this one, I know it opens upwards. It's pretty obvious to see. If I'm looking at this one, well, I can see that my lowest point here has 2 zeros on either side of it, so that's got to be my minimum, right? That's got to be the vertex down at -3. So I know they both open up, okay? And both of these ones don't have maximums, they have minimums, all right? If I'm going down the zeros here, I've got at 2 and -2. And the zeros here, I've got at -1 and 1. Okay, my minimum here is -4. My minimum here is -3. And my rate of change often will be given a range for which to evaluate this. In this case, I'm going to say that the range that makes the most sense to me is going to be starting at 0 and going over to 2. Okay, starting at 0 and going to 2. So the rate of change for this one, I'm starting at -4, and 2 is my 0, so I'm coming up 4 and over 2. Okay, so I've got a 4 over 2, or simplified, a rate of change of 2. And remember, that's average rate of change. Okay, for this one, same thing. I'm starting at -3, okay, and I'm coming up to 6. So my rise is going to actually be 9, coming up a lot, but I'm still going over the same amount. So my rate of change for this one is 9 over 2, or 4.5. Okay, so with this we can start to compare. We can say, okay, well, they're similar in that they come up in the same direction. This graph is slightly wider on the zeros. I have just one out from each of my zeros on my table. The graph has a lower minimum. Okay, it dips down lower. And then the rate of change, the graph is going to be wider. It's not going to be as steep going up because the rate of change on my table is quite a bit higher. Okay, and that's how we're going to compare our quadratic functions.